All right, I'm going to call us back from recess. We're going to reconvene, and we're now on item 5. Council questions or discussion regarding consent or statutory items for our second regular meeting later this evening. Council? While y'all are getting ready, can you clarify for the city manager this 5D, the stabilized cement with Knife River? Said it's an annual price agreement. Is that what we're typically doing, just so the ups and downs of the market?
Yeah. I believe Eric Zaragoza can answer that for you.
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's an annual price agreement. We'll go out for bid, and this one came out. We are going to be moving forward with, I believe this one's going to be with Knife River.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. But, I mean, this is something we're doing each year?
Yes, and it has a renewal on it and an escalation, de-escalation clause in it as well. It's typical. This is something that we've been doing. The price agreement was up, so we went out for bid.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mayor, we'll be pulling 6E for a future meeting.
Echo?
Yes.
6E. Okay.
And the regular agenda item 7A is also going to be postponed for a future meeting.
6E and 7A?
Yes.
Our only regular agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that simplifies that. Okay, I removed 6E and 7A for city manager. Thank you for that clarification. Other questions from council?
Yes, sir, I have one. Consent on 6G, the construction contract to OCC Construction Corporation. Curious if that's where that company's based.
Did you say 6G is in golf?
Yes, sir. Oh, 5. I'm sorry. 5.
Okay, 5G. Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
OCC?
Yes, sir. Just wanted to find out if that's a local, have they done work for us before? Is that a local corporation? Is that a local company?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Can you give us a little update on where they're from, where they're based?
Oh, I'd have to go into the, do you know? G5G, I think. I'd have to go back and look and get that information back to you to be.
And the reason I asked, I'm not familiar with them, and I'm just curious who they are. I mean, personally, being on council, with our taxpayers' money, I'd like to try. I know we can't always do it, but I'd like to try to keep, bids we award to local companies, Bryan-College station companies, where, we can help our local economy. That's something that I'd like to see. I know that's not always the case if it's a lower bid. And I think this is something I want to bring up also, Keen. Maybe you can help me on this. I know when we do bids, the companies have to be bonded, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If it's a lower bid, and $87,000 by any means isn't low, but it's low in comparison with, let's say, doing Woodville Road or Palisota Street or $1 million contract. If it's under a certain amount, let's say it's under 100,000, just throw a number out there. Is there any way we could waive or say, hey, we've worked with the local company so many times that we don't need them to necessarily be bonded to do this job? Is there any way, and I'm just throwing that out there, just thinking outside of the box, just so we can try to give some of our smaller local companies some of these smaller bids?
Yeah, I don't know that we would.
When they kill somebody, you're going to want them to be bonded.
See, and that's, I mean,
Say again? Yeah, I'm assuming
but the bond is more for the work itself. It's not, I mean, they're going to be insured themselves. The bond is more for the work, like the work that was done out here on Municipal Building. I mean, they were bonded and the job was horrible. I mean, it had to get redone.
It took a while, but the bond, yeah, but it got paid. So that's what we had the payment and performance bond for, is for, that was a new contractor from this area, new in business, and got in, I guess, a little over their head. If we would not have had a payment performance bond, we would have been stuck. Instead, the performance bond paid the difference.
But let's say if it's a company that, because we inspect every job that gets done throughout the process, right? I mean, that's what our inspectors do.
Yes.
If it's a company that we've been working with, we've been inspecting for 10 plus years or something.
What about that one time that we have, even if, so it's an 80,000, now we certainly would do on $1 million plus jobs, but even if it's a $50,000 job, what happens if that's the one job where they fail to
that we get stuck with or get bid on?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just, like I said, just throwing it out there, King. Just curious.
And there are state law requirements that we have to have these bonds. 50,000.
For, over 50?
Public work, 50,000.
Over 50.
Yeah.
And actually, can you educate me, is the bonding just for the quality of the work and not for accidents?
Two bonds. One's payment, the other's performance. One is
And insurance.
Hold on,
They
yeah,
also provide
so
us
it's payment,
insurance.
performance bonds, and then there is the third is there's insurance requirements in addition to that.
Yeah.
Can you
I
repeat
guess
that?
I'm generically just calling that the bonding process.
No, bonding is for payment and performance.
Yeah,
The
okay.
insurance is to cover generally up to our self-insured amount, which is, I believe, $1 million, 1.5 million.
That's just the primary insured for an accident that happens and we're the backup.
Right, and then we have stop loss above a certain amount. So we try to cover ourselves 100% in every project.
Okay.
The company, OCC, their address is Highway 6 South in College Station.
Okay, great. Good to know. That's what I was curious about. I wasn't familiar with them. Okay, thanks, guys.
Councilman Sutherland.
Yes, Mayor, on 5G, the $59 million, the resolution doesn't specify what that money's to be used for. It says
5G?
I'm sorry, 6G, excuse me, 6G. $59 million. It says in the item on the agenda, it says regional park, but in the resolution, it doesn't say that. It says park. So the way that's written, another council can use that money for whatever. I think it ought to specify exactly what you're talking about. So, for instance, we need work done at BRAC. Can we spend some of that money at BRAC? Because it doesn't pin it down anywhere. It just says parks would be the only pin down.
I haven't read it, so I'll have to ask Joe.
Yeah, the budget that the council approved, the 59 million, was for the regional park. So, council would have to approve spending on another
Something other
park in
than
order
that.
to do it. Yeah.
We go sell bonds for one thing if you use them for
Right.
something else.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. You're not specifying that this is the bonds associated with that item at the regional park. It just says parks and repairs.
I think it.
No, I don't
I don't
say
have the details. We can get back with you on that.
Huh?
Yeah, if you
We
could
can
look
get
into.
back with you on
you
that.
could get
Okay.
look into
Today.
that. Thank you.
Okay.
Can't hear who.
He said he's going to look into that and get back with
Hold
us.
the mic closer to
Yeah,
you.
we will get back to you with an answer on that question today.
Thank you. Any other questions, statutory or consent? Okay, next is 6A, presentation by community development staff on our 5-year consolidated planning process. Keen?
I'm sorry, I was reading this other item. Which item are we on?
Oh, you're right. We've got a council, pardon me. That's why I jumped the gun on you. We still have 5B for, we postponed 1 or 2 of them, right? We've got a few.
Actually, these are your assignments that the council discusses every year. In front of you, there is a handout that looks like this. It was also in your packet. It says City Council appointed representatives. And this is the time of year when you discuss your council committee assignments for the next year, if you so choose to do so. If you're ready to go tonight, I can walk you through it quickly.
Oh, wait, do we have a full? Okay.
So we bring this back on January.
Sure.
Okay, will do.
They're going to be here.
Okay. So, Keen, can you do 6A, the consolidated planning process?
Sure, that's Alcy. Alcy Bond with our community development department will do this.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council member. Our presentation tonight focuses on the upcoming 5-year consolidated planning process for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnership Program funds. All right. Why is it not going? I'm sorry, I got it. So we're very excited. This year is the last year of our 5-year plan that we're currently in. And so in 2020, we'll be submitting our 5-year plan and annual action plan. So we just wanted to update you all on that process, kind of what goes on and what we're doing. And in addition to that, we're going to be providing you information on some preliminary studies and getting some general feedback from you. But the 5-year plan is what determines what we're going to be doing as far as the type of programs that we have We determine needs, we set priorities, and we do this through what HUD calls a needs assessment. So there's a market analysis, and that's generally on the housing side. We do surveys, focus groups, community meetings, and consultations. And then this serves as the formal application to HUD and a strategic planning process for the next 5 years. So on the left side, you will see the type of activities that are eligible for CDBG. So housing, code enforcement, public facilities, infrastructure, planning, admin. And then on the right, you'll see our current programs. And I will say in the past 20 plus years that I've been with the city, we have programs in all of the eligible activities except for historic preservation. So on the right side, you'll see major rehab, reconstruction, down payment assistance, housing developments, minor repair, clearance, demolition, public service agency funding, public facility and infrastructure, and then occasionally there'll be some special projects. So those are our current programs, and then the eligible activities on the left. So I'm going to give you a month-by-month timeline. We began in October. We're kind of in that planning process right now, October, November, December, looking at all the preliminary, what we're required to do, the surveys that we're required, the needs assessments, everything that goes into that planning process we review right now. And so tonight we're doing the workshop council engagement, and that's me providing you information about that process and kind of hopefully giving you an idea of the scope of the 5-year plan, what it takes to do that, and how we get down to developing programs, maybe updating programs or keeping programs. It really kind of depends on the needs assessment and, of course, council direction. So in January, we'll start with the data processing, and that's focus group meetings, surveys, an opportunity to get out and speak with our target population, but also to do interviews and consultations that we're required to do, service providers, city council input, other entities in the community like the Brazos Valley Council of Government, the hospitals, any entity out there that we think may come in contact with our target population. And then in February and March, we'll continue working on and gathering that data. And then in April, we hope to come back to you and provide you some preliminary findings. Here's what's going on in our community. Here's what's going on in the city of Bryan. And at that point, we'll have about a 3-month window before we submit the plan. So at that point, I'll be asking you all for a little more guidance. You know, what do you want to see in the programs? Do we want to revise any programs? Do we want to delete any programs? Do we want to add new programs? Then from May to August, it's basically the same as in the previous years. We'll present to the public in June, and then we'll present to council again in July, and then it'll go to HUD in August.
Excuse me, Elsie.
Yes, sir. So
in April, when you come before the council, we can add things and delete things there as a council?
In April, yes, okay. that is, we're going to come to you and say, here's what we found.
Yeah.
Here's the housing conditions.
Okay.
Here's the health and social service needs. Here's the priorities. We'll set priorities based on the needs assessment.
Okay.
And then we'll ask for your input. You may say, well, we'd like a change in this program, or we'd like a change in that program. So yes, sir, that's it.
But we'll vote and approve on that in July.
Yes,
that gives you 90 days to respond to everything you've done and to us, and then come back in July so we can presumably approve it in July, and you can get it submitted in August.
And I really want to do that before that June public hearing, because we're going to present to the public. So by that time, we would really want your input on any changes that we're going to make. So on the housing side, we're required to do housing and non-housing. So on the housing side, that doesn't just include, what's on the ground. It includes special needs population. So the elderly, the disabled, the homeless. And so we do this through a housing market analysis. We look at public housing, we look at assisting housing, we look at the homeless inventory and any special needs and what type of barriers there are to affordable housing.
When you say we have a requirement, housing and non-housing, what do you mean by requirement? Is that each city in the country has a requirement?
For the 5-year plan, each city that has receives these funds are required to do a housing analysis and a non-housing analysis. And that's based off these different factors. So basically what that's saying is what's in your city, you know, in regards to the special targeted population, low and moderate income areas, what is out there to serve that population, and on the housing side and then on the non-housing side.
And do you look only within the city limits? Or
Yes.
do you, when you look at the requirements, if you're 100 feet outside the city limits, you basically can ignore that?
Yes. Unfortunately, it's only within the city limits of Bryan. No, we are an entitlement city, so that means the federal funds come to us. So the county does not receive the same type of funds that we do. Now, the Council of Governments does receive CDBG funds, but they have their own plan for outside the counties.
So, but you work when you're dispersing these funds, you're working with a Community Development Advisory Committee that's made up not just of people in the city of Bryan, but people from the whole community, right?
No, sir. You have to be a resident of Bryan to be on the CDAC committee.
Okay, so there's not a area where people from Bryan and College Station and the county are getting together in the room to...
We do that, yes.
Okay,
On
so
an
help me
informal
understand what that
basis,
is.
yes. We do that. We have a housing coalition where the city of Bryan, the city of College Station, and the county, different nonprofits and other interested housing developers, where we meet and talk about housing needs in Brazos County, both the city, Bryan, and the surrounding area. It's not a requirement, but we see that as a need, you know, because these funds are for within the city limits, but we do meet as a coalition to talk about other issues in both areas and issues that are common to all of us.
So when we have people in one city working in another city, I mean, effectively, this, you know, to address housing, we really need to see this as Bryan-College Station and not just Bryan or College Station. But it sounds like you're saying the rules for the federal government say if we've got, you know, as someone might say, we only want high-end stuff in this city, and this other city, Bryan, has a much more diverse community. It seems like the requirements almost reinforce that setup between the two cities. Is that a fair interpretation of the way these rules are working?
The requirements, the grants are for targeted special needs population, low and moderate income. And so each city is charged with looking at their housing needs, whether it be Bryan, College Station, Austin, Houston. So they're looking at their needs in accordance to the funding that they receive. And so that's the requirements of the grant. Now, as staff, CD, we do work with College Station, we do work with the county and other partners in our community to look at it more holistically, like what you're talking about. But as far as the 5-year planning process, we're only required to look within the city limits.
Are we allowed to look beyond it?
Sure, yeah.
Because I would encourage us to do that, because it seems to me that we're receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars less in CDBG grants than College Station to address a problem that seems to be kind of pushed to to the city of Bryan. So it seems like we have bigger challenges, and somehow, based on the calculation, we're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars less funding. Seems like a very difficult situation for Bryan to solve without really partnering with College Station to say, let's be two cities in one community and address this as a twin cities. Yep. And not just have Bryan really shoulder the entire burden of affordable housing in this county.
I think that for the 5-year planning process, we have to follow the rules, but certainly we can provide input into our partnerships and our coalition and our discussions with the city of College Station, with the county, to look at the area needs more broadly in the sense of what you're saying.
I would sure appreciate it. Could you
Okay.
do that so that when
We
you
sure
present
will.
this back to us, we're
Yes.
looking at what Bryan-College Station can do hand in hand to solve the problem?
But their 5-year plan will directly look at, within their city limits, ours will provide ours, but we will also look at a way to reach out to them and discuss that in a broader manner.
Yeah, well, if you're saying they're
Okay.
allowed to,
Yeah.
it'd be nice if you could encourage them to see if they're interested in looking at this as a Bryan-College Station challenge. Because I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of the people who are working in College Station would like to live in College Station. People who work in Bryan would like to live in Bryan.
Yeah.
And, it seems like it'd be nice if they can. If they
I
can do it, that they
definitely,
would.
I definitely know that the CD staff is interested in that and is very open and is willing to partner with us. We partner on the health and social service side all the time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other councilman?
I have one question. Alcie, on the joint relief funding is funded by CDBG. Is that both cities?
Yes.
CDBG?
Yes,
And
and that's a
then-
partnership we do.
And so College Station uses their CDBG funds and we use ours, and there's a group
Yes.
that meets together, both Bryan and College Station, to decide what funds go to what organizations. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, yes.
That's
And-
what
So
I was-
that's a great
that's what I was
example right
thinking.
there.
And
Yeah.
what organizations are those? Do you know?
Habitat.
Not off the top of my head. We're currently funding, I think, Catholic Charities, Brazos Valley Rehab, our own Bryan Summer Parks. And there's a new program called the UP program, which is comes off of Voices for Children. And then there's one more program that I don't remember.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking when I said,
Yes.
aren't we already kind of doing this
Oh,
with
okay,
the two
okay.
cities? And
Yeah.
it's that-
Those are all
You're exactly
non-housing,
right.
non-housing organizations.
Yes, those are non-housing health and social service, but we definitely do have a coalition for housing that talks about the area, not just the city of Bryan.
When can you spend the federal money outside our city limits?
We cannot, no.
Well, but all of those groups aren't in Bryan. Those nonprofit groups you just mentioned, are they all housed here in Bryan?
The nonprofit groups,
Yeah.
yes.
They're all in
So
Bryan city limits.
there is a regulation that states if you can prove that you have a need to fund outside for instance, the nonprofits, there's nothing in College Station. There's not a nonprofit located there, but they have residents residing there that need to use the Bryan facility. That's how they fund Bryan.
What about housing? Can you do that with housing?
I've never, the requirement is specific to there's nothing located within that jurisdiction. So obviously there's housing located within College Station jurisdiction, but there's not nonprofits located there. So that's the caveat of that regulation. I can look into it further. Yeah, I can look into it further. But I'm pretty sure it ties upon the only way you can do that is that you don't have, you can't support that need there. So College Station doesn't have nonprofits located there, but they have them located in Bryan. So that's how that goes. But I can look into it further.
Thank you.
Most of the nonprofits funded are located in Bryan. Occasionally, there's one in College Station, but the majority of the nonprofit health and social service organizations are located in Bryan.
And let's recognize that Bryan existed for about, 70, however many years before College Station did, and some of these organizations have been around for a while,
Yes.
more established, in Bryan. So, I mean, I understand, just helping to understand
Yeah.
the mechanics of this,
Yeah.
since we do this once
Yeah.
every 5 years,
Yeah.
that's why the questions come out.
But Alcie, there's other programs outside of CDBG that would allow us to partner with College Station, like some of those tax credit funded programs.
Yes,
So we could partner with them in those kind of situations.
On tax credit?
Yes, some of those tax credit projects where you form a
on
corporation.
tax credit, that is to Region 6, so a particular
You could
city
compete.
council would have to approve that if
Right.
you were going to.
You
We haven't
compete
had
with it.
particularly good luck with tax credit housing
I
projects.
don't mean somebody else doing it. I mean, if we combined with College Station and did one in College Station, maybe.
Would that be a part of the 5-year plan?
No.
If we
No,
did
that's
that?
a total
No.
program.
Okay.
That's a different program.
This is in relation to CDBG and home
Gotcha.
only. Not
That's
that we
how it
don't do other things, we do. So that was a little bit about the planning process, and I really appreciate your questions. The mayor had asked us to provide information as soon as we could about preliminary housing conditions. And so the physical conditions are in the next 2 or 3 slides, and you'll see that we have 5 different categories: excellent, good, conservative, dilapidated, and substandard. And this gives, this excludes mobile homes, but I will have a slide on that in just a few minutes. So this just gives you an idea out of 31,407 households, the breakdown. Our data came from the Brazos County Appraisal District, and they have an excellent rating system where every 3 years they're charged with going out and physically inspecting on the outside of houses the condition of that home, so, or that apartment or that duplex. And so they have a rating system that goes from like 100% all the way down to 0. And so they rate the houses based on the condition of the house, the repairs that the homeowner has done, when the unit was built or put in place. And so we took about 2 or 3 months to go through that process of rating and looking at what they did, but these are the categories and what fell out in those different areas. For substandard and dilapidated, you'll see for single family, 821 and then 160. And for us, that's really where we're focused in on owner-occupied single family homes. That is right now currently part of our major reconstruction, minor repair, and major rehab. So we're really looking at, what's out there, what the condition shows, and also kind of what's going on and has been going on in the last few years. So this slide provides information on substandard and dilapidated since 2005, and the reason 2020 there is it'll be in the 2020-24 5-year plan. And as you can see, there's a little bit of difference, especially on the substandard side, between.
Can you clarify to this council the definition of a substandard versus a dilapidated?
Okay, so basically substandard means it's repairable. Not necessarily minor repair, but maybe a major rehab. And dilapidated is when it's gotten to the point of not being feasible to be rehabbed. In other words, it's going to be reconstructed or torn down.
And just to clarify, if it takes X amount of dollars to make a substandard home what would that be? Would it turn from a substandard to a good home? To a conservable home? I mean, if
we're going to rehab, it would probably go to good.
Okay.
And if we're going to reconstruct it, go to excellent, because it'd be a brand new home. Okay.
Okay, and is it that a dilapidated home, you could put the money in, but when you get done doing it, it's not worth it? You might as well just tear it down and build a new one with the money it's going to take to do that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Substandard houses can be reconstructed?
Sometimes we do. It really, and we go on a case-by-case basis. I gave you the general definition, but when we're really looking at each household, sometimes a substandard home will come down. It really depends on what we're thinking about putting into it and, how much it's going to cost. So really, for reconstruction, for us, we look at the dilapidated first, but we could do a substandard home. There's not a rule that says we couldn't. Tear it down and rebuild it. But I did want to point out between each one of the years, we had a slightly different methodology. So in 2005, you'll see it says Texas A&M students and staff. And so we had a group of Texas A&M students who did drive-by inspections for us. And then in 2010, we had the meter readers and staff. And then in 15 and 20, we relied solely on BCAD data. And for us, and looking at all the different changes between the 5 years, I would say some of that's due to possibly owners tearing down their properties and rebuilding. There's a huge difference to me between 15 and current on the substandard side. Possibly, I know that we did a lot of demolitions during that period when we had a little bit of extra money from a different grant. So I would say that reconstructs, property owners themselves tearing down their property and rebuilding, possibly detached units that could have affected the numbers, and also a slight difference in the methodology too.
But
Elsie,
that's a great record. I mean, from 1,600 to 800, Lord, that's wonderful.
I think it shows a good trend.
Yeah.
It's not 100% scientific. I'd be the first to admit it because there's changes.
But even if it's
between how we did
80%,
it.
that's still great.
Well, thank you.
And the one. So, do you think? How close do you think that 889 was to being dilapidated structures? How many of those? You think that was half that number, or trying to figure out exactly where we were? Must be at least 376 because the second time they got a lower number.
The only issue we have with those are two different groups, two different standards that they would use. So we really.
I'm just trying to figure. If you average it, what would that be, Mayor? 500. So
The average between them is it's closer to 600.
When you look at substandard, you look at 2010 to 2015, and then the difference between 2015 and 2020.
So some of that's math, but surely there's a. I mean, you got to give them credit for doing some of that, taking care of some of that. It's not just all observation.
So in the last 5 years, though, where we've had a consistent, I'm not sure what BCAD means and how that happens, and I don't necessarily need to dig totally into the weeds, but just assuming it was a consistent system, which is a big assumption, it seems to be stagnant between 2015 and 2020. What do you think we need to do to get that number from 160 down to 0? Because that ought to be the 5-year goal.
Yes, sir. I certainly agree. I think reconstructs, I think partnering more. I think creatively looking at the reconstruct program, if there's any way that we can reduce the amount of federal funds we're putting into it and possibly getting developers to participate in that, that will probably be something we bring back a form of that.
But isn't dilapidated, does dilapidated include, is it necessarily in an unsafe house, or is it, hey, the house is safe, it's just to get it where it needs to be, it just costs too much money? It's
unsafe. It is unsafe. It is, and a lot of people sometimes are living in these units, but it also is units that are not being lived in. So, units that might go to building and standards that come down,
that can't be right,
that are demolished.
Well, hold on a second. We have, Councilman made a comment that we've torn down more than 2. Yeah. You're tearing them down, but there are others that go from substandard to, if a leak doesn't get addressed for a couple of years, it moves into dilapidated. So it's more of a flow rate, right?
Yes, sir. And so you really can't look at one single factor. You have to look at the whole picture.
Come in.
My question.
Are they rental properties? Are they homeowners living in these dilapidated houses?
There are both. There are both.
And so I think the mayor asked the question of what can we do. I think as council, and probably something that we need to come up with on addressing dilapidated special rental properties. Because I think in District 2, a lot of dilapidated and substandard houses are rental properties, and that these people are paying, $500-600 a month staying in dilapidated substandard housing, which is really, to me, unreasonable.
So, needs
to be fixed.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I'm going to give Councilman Marine the floor. I've missed him.
I had a few questions. You
want to give Joey, did you want to respond to something here?
I just wanted to clarify that we had talked about several years ago a maintenance code that would affect all of the flow, if you will, between all of the conditions of housing that had been looked at some time ago by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, how far do you want to go with that?
You mean like the colony has an inspection process where you change renters, you have to be inspected?
Greater regulation with regard to things that affect the overall condition of the home. If it's painting, or roof work, or it's exterior. And that's where the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm going back to memory here, but several years ago, they wanted to stick with exterior. But if you keep the envelope in good shape, you're gonna reduce the amount that will go from substandard to dilapidated. I just wanted, y'all asked about it a second ago, and I know that was something that had been talked about, and I'm not taking it off the table. I'm just saying we believe that's one that could affect.
Thank you. I'm going to give Councilman Marine the floor again, but thank you for that clarification.
Okay, a few questions. On the slide before, it said dilapidated and it had apartments. So we have apartment units that are dilapidated. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first, why do we have people renting apartments that are dilapidated? I mean, I don't think that should be, that shouldn't even be allowed.
Just shut them down.
Second of all, how many of these dilapidated properties have been put in front of Building and Standards Committee? Do you have a number on that, on how many of those have been put in front of Building and Standards and where they're at in that process?
Yeah. No, I do not.
Have any of them?
Yeah.
I mean, are there some of them that have been?
Yeah. I'm sure that there are some that have been. As far as you're talking about apartments and
or homes, apartments. I mean,
yes.
Because if they're dilapidated, like you said, some are livable, some aren't. Some are being currently lived in, some aren't.
Right.
Which of these? I mean, we shouldn't have our citizens living in these type of places.
Councilman, we can give you a report of the caseload that's going to the Building Standards Commission, BSC, and that includes a lot of rental property, not just single family or commercial, but all structures. The ones that are already leased, that's a very difficult situation that our building inspection staff gets involved in terms of relocation of tenants.
If the owner's getting a monthly payment from a citizen to live in an apartment, that owner should be spending that money to get that apartment up to code.
And that's part of the discussion about maintenance code.
I mean, that's a slumlord, basically, is what I hate to use that term, but that's what's going on. We shouldn't allow that in our city.
So I don't know what we should call it, Joey, but I think...
I hate to use that, but that's the term that people reference.
What the mayor is saying is getting this number down to whatever the mayor says, 0, something like that.
Right.
I don't know if we should call it maintenance code, or also just looking at how do we fix it to where we have people looking at these situations.
Well, we understand some people, that's all they can afford. I mean, we've had people come, I mean, we understand that. So those citizens should be the priority as far as, in my eyes, when they come to your department, they'll say, hey, God, we need to move these people up. This is all they can afford. They're living in a dilapidated house. We need to help these citizens.
And to reiterate on the point that came up from some of the confusion on, hey, the number went from just 162 to 160. Part of this is really to look at this as a flow. It would be helpful to say, of the 162, have they been 162 and they've been that way for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Or no, man, we just, we've got another big number called substandard, and these are flowing in. What's the average time in which it takes for something to go from dilapidated to not either condemn it, tear it down, or repair? I guess when you're saying dilapidated, it's really beyond repair though, right? So, I mean, if you've got apartments where there's dilapidated, the only real, you're saying it's not going to make sense, and the person's just going to stay a slumlord, and it's going to get as bad as possible until someone gets hurt or until everyone leaves.
Well, and sorry, she also has a figure on it that says properties. So the apartments we're talking about are units. I mean, the first number.
5 properties?
Properties. So I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate here, but I don't think they're all occupied and likely occupied under dilapidated housing. They could be waiting for building standards. They could be in various stages of regulatory.
Can we follow up on that to make sure they're in front of?
We sure can.
Inspectors need to be there tomorrow.
This is data. This is data we're getting from BCAD. So we're tracking, separately cases that are going, to BSC.
So it would be nice if we identify a property, a door, however you do it, when you identify that, to almost like a case. it was started on this day, and let's track and see how, and then we can look at these as their own statistics, because maybe the number isn't 162 and 160, maybe it's 1,100 and 1,102, and that way we're really seeing the real, because you're doing a lot of work. Obviously, we know you're doing a lot of good work here. 162 to 160 makes it look kind of like, well, nothing happened there, right? And I know that's not what's happening behind those numbers. Councilman Hairston.
Thank you, Mayor. Alty, thank you for the presentation. I'd first like to ask that, I know I would like to get a copy of this presentation. I imagine some of the other council members would as well, so if you could do that. Secondly, is there by chance, and maybe it's later in the presentation, I don't know if you're at the end or not, but is there a map that maybe highlights dots where the dilapidated houses are?
We don't have one currently, but yes, we can look at that. And I also, as I mentioned earlier, this is Brazos County Appraisal District information, hot off the press. But there are several city departments that work together, planning, development, public works, community development, to look at all these housing issues. So I wanted to assure you that although I'm providing you some data, internally, we're looking at, as Joey referred, building in standards has dilapidated units come up against them for demolishing. So we're looking at that internally. In community development and with the grants, we do not currently have rental programs, but we're charged with looking at what's out there and what the situation is. So really, I'm providing you the broad picture and the outline of what we're going to do, but we, as a city and those internal departments, are really concerned about people living in healthy and safe conditions.
And Alty, just thank you for all that.
There is a map and a few slides that shows by district the amount of money spent, so it'll give you some idea.
Okay, it'd be nice to have little dots where each of those identified dilapidated houses are. I don't know if that's creatable or not, but by the way, the third thing, and it's been mentioned, so I won't beat up on it too bad, but building in standards, it would be nice to know what number of cases are going.
We can do both of those. Yes, sir.
The throughput per year.
Before we come back.
Okay, Councilman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Elsie, it seems to me that y'all were recommending, and Councilman Marine was saying that it's the owner's responsibility to maintain these structures, and they shouldn't be allowed to get away with not maintaining them. So if we have an inspection program like they do in the colony, like you were talking about, Joey, that would put the onus on the owner, and we'd have to spend less money on those properties, and we spend more money on the ones that really need it, because those people are just getting away with murder, so to speak, in terms of not maintaining those properties. And that's been pretty successful in the colony. I've had some friends that live up there, and they really like it. But I don't know how. That'll put some pressure on some people. So, but that's a solution to reduce that flow into the dilapidated pipeline. So I think we ought to look at that.
Okay, so now we have manufactured homes, and we did get a report from the Brazos County Appraisal District. And there were 2,819 units on BCAD, and we evaluated 2,783. And the difference in that, I think that's 36 units because there were some duplication in addresses, and then some of the addresses didn't have the additional information that we were looking for. So one interesting fact that I found out, and I didn't know, is that the owner of that manufactured home can designate themselves whether that's real property or personal property. And then they do either a homestead or a disability by the owner. And I didn't know that, but I just find it interesting information that the owner of the property makes that designation themselves. Well, if it's personal property, they could be taxed differently. Yeah, so that might be a reason. And other interesting facts, at least 67% of these units were put into place in 1999 or earlier.
Earlier?
Yes.
I mean, before 1999?
Yes, sir.
The other really interesting piece is 23% are owner occupied.
And we figured that's conservative because some people don't claim homesteads, but they are owner occupied. Yeah.
And, okay.
Oops, I'll go
Thank
back.
you.
Sorry.
No, please go.
Okay.
You just flipped to another slide here, right?
I did.
It looks so much like the other one, but I was like, wait, that's the information I was about to ask you about.
Well, this just breaks it out into how we looked at our manufactured homes into good, conservable, substandard, and dilapidated. So you can see most of the units are in those last two areas, substandard and dilapidated. And I will tell you that, you know, community development themselves are very vested into looking at the mobile home situation. We cannot do any type of reconstruct with home funds, but we can with CDBG. And we currently have, you know, our program, the Reconstruct program, can be funded with CDBG. But the Home Foundation program that you all approved is, you know, we're working on that. We're working to partner. We actually, in last year, currently we have 2 that we think are going to qualify to come down and be reconstructed with CDBG. But last year, we had a lady that was living in a mobile home, and we referred her to Rebuilding Together, and they tore down the home and rebuilt it with no federal funds in it whatsoever. We just did the guiding process. And so I'd like to do more of that guiding process to where we can get other people in the community to hopefully partner with us. But we'll continue with the Home Foundation program. We have met with numerous families. And right now we have 2 that we think are qualified, and a great group of banks and developers who are willing to really work with these clients.
Can you clarify? I know city manager said that, highlighted that you said 23% of the manufactured housing is owner occupied, 77% rental. For the other, you know, the prior set of data that was not manufactured housing, do you have a similar number for what percentage of that is owner occupied?
We do not have it current for this data, but in the past, census data is about 49 to 51%.
Including both, right?
Yes.
So if the one is 70, probably guesstimate would be 60% owner occupied? 60 to 65%?
I would say 49% owner occupied, 51% rental.
But that's citywide, right?
Yes.
And you're just telling me out of the thousands of mobile homes here, only 23%. So if it's 49 to 50 as a city and it's only 23, somewhere you got to make up the difference, right?
Yes, sir.
That probably means it's somewhere like 60% owner occupied for non-manufactured housing, 60 to 70. It'd be interesting to know what that number is for with that number. The other thing is, just looking at this number, if I add up for the first set, the substandard and dilapidated, it looks like 8.8% of the entire city of Bryan is either substandard or dilapidated, excluding the manufactured housing, since you excluded that, right?
Yes, sir.
But if you're saying 62%, the numbers you're giving me are substandard, dilapidated manufactured housing, and 77% of that is rental, that means 48% of the substandard and dilapidated housing is rental manufactured housing. I mean, that's a stunning number.
You have a very quick brain.
Excuse me, say that again, Mayor?
Going back, can you,
Yes,
so
sir.
right here we have substandard 56%. Can you actually go back to where you were?
Okay.
So we have substandard 56%, dilapidated 6. 56 and 6 is 62%. And then of that 62%, 23% of that is owner occupied, 77% of it is not owner occupied. So I'm just taking 77% of that 62%, which gets us 48%. So literally half of our unsafe or dilapidated housing on the manufactured homes are renters. And so again, that's even a more, it's kind of like the same conversation we just had about the dilapidated on the one, but we can do even more to help by putting some pressure on these, certainly these substandard, because these are savable, right?
I would say the number's higher, Mayor, because I would say the good condition and conservable are probably the ones that are owner occupied versus the substandard and dilapidated are probably people that are renting those out.
Right.
So it's probably,
Yeah, that's
it
what
may
it
be
is.
even
That's what
higher
it
than
said.
that number.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Councilman.
so you have 166 dilapidated mobile manufactured homes. And on the other, how many were on the, so a total of how many dilapidated homes?
On
With-
the single family,
Yes, ma'am.
it
And
was
apartments,
160, I think.
828.
160.
That's right,
Yeah.
right? 160.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, 328, right?
160.
162 and 166?
322. Mm-hmm. Oh, 326 total.
332, actually. 166 and 162?
160.
Yeah, 328,
26.
right? So it's basically 328. However you break them up for us, we've got 300 to 350 that are unsafe currently.
And the dilapidated.
Unsafe or unsavable, or both.
Elsie, whenever y'all do a reconstruction of a home,
Yeah, no.
do you put the family somewhere? Do we have somewhere, I mean, do we pay for some?
No, all of our programs are volunteer, and so we discuss that with the family when they come in, and they relocate, usually with another family member.
Okay, just curious if we did anything.
Okay.
Councilman?
Okay, Joey. So we're talking about inspecting homes. Can we inspect the mobile homes also?
So initial,
For have an ordinance that says you have to have these conditions when you change renters and the other.
there are certain things that can be inspected about manufactured, HUD code manufactured homes. Some things can't be
Right.
because they already come in with a sticker, but
Right.
any modifications or anything like that. And
But if
then
they're
in the shape
dilapidated,
that they're in and they're
yeah,
doing repairs,
right.
all of that is inspectable
Okay,
and
so
is
if
inspected
we have
by the
that
city.
ordinance, instead of Alcee working by herself to get all this stuff corrected.
Well, I can
we
assure
have-
you she's not
I
working
know,
by
but,
herself.
The city, okay, the city's working
It's
by
just
itself to get it
number
done.
of
You have
departments
all the
involved.
owners working on it, trying to increase those things. And if they don't,
Right.
it's clear how to get rid of them. So I really think we need to do that ordinance.
Well,
Pressure is
I would propose that we kind of resurrect that discussion, and I would like to bring in some other departments. So, again, our building official deals with this every day.
Right.
People are living in squalor.
They don't have much tools to do with it.
and-
But what we're talking about doing is getting it before it gets to squalor.
Correct, but
when it's on the
ideally,
down-
we'd like to get together, kind of resurrect that plan and really to look at either if you want us to bring back a discussion or even an item that would have you look at a maintenance code. We talked about registration at one time. I hate to bring that up, but
Yeah, but I don't think that's the
rental
idea.
registration. But that tells you,
That tells you who they are, but that don't fix them. That doesn't get them fixed.
Every time you get a new tenant, though, if you've got a dilapidated, you could go, wait a second, this thing isn't even rentable.
Yeah,
so
right.
fix it before you go.
but a
get it.
maintenance code, I don't want to make
Right.
you think of it as
Discuss that.
one track here, but there is a hybrid we could bring back that we could certainly look at that would address condition of
I
homes.
think it needs to be tough because it's such a terrible problem. And so you can make it tough at first and then relax it as you go along, so.
So if you're processing hundreds and hundreds of these, but just the same numbers coming in, I get it, but is this council of the view that we ought to have zero dilapidated? as our
Absolutely,
goal?
no question,
Absolutely.
especially if it's a
So-
rental and someone's making money off
Christian, yeah.
that.
So can
Dilapidated
when you
home.
come back in April, because I know you're going to do that, can you give us a plan for how we can get to zero as quickly as possible? What are the ways to get to zero? I mean, I also care about the substandard, so let's also look at how to dramatically lower that. But I think you're hearing some consensus that, whether it's registration, whether it's the maintenance codes, let's.
But I think the reason we dropped this is because we already had code enforcement looking at these facilities or these structures, and they were it's supposed to kind of work itself out. So this kind of faded off. And I mean, because we had talked
again-
about it, we looked at this.
No, but they don't have the tools.
Yeah.
They don't have the tools.
That was our first year on council.
I know we got a lot of interest here, but I'm gonna keep our process going, and I want Councilman Harrison to have the floor for a moment.
Alex or Joe, either one of y'all can handle this. The dilapidated houses, particularly as it involves the rental properties and what have you. Do you think the majority of these are folks that just will not make repairs, or do you think there's circumstances, and you have any sense of those that maybe cannot?
If they're getting paid by,
I know, but they're
For
going to have the money.
For owner occupied, I think they cannot. And that is why
That's a whole nother ballgame.
we have our program. For rental, we don't have rental programs within CDBG. So I would not know the answer to that. I do know that there are situations where possibly they cannot, but if you own the property,
Sure.
But,
Well, we don't
but
need
for
to,
us,
we don't need to have
owner-occupied.
dilapidated
Yeah.
structures. I
Well,
think that's a
and-
given, but
and
I
let's-
just wondering.
And
And
let's
that's part of why I'm
face it,
standing
we-
here too, is because community development only deals with a portion of this problem we're talking about. When we're talking about rental property, they're really not involved in that at all. So, I mean, we need to look at a holistic approach to regulatory as well as where's the funding going to incentivize or to partner or do things like, but you mentioned a while ago, I thought we were doing this. We are very aggressive on dilapidated and taking structures forward that are already in that last category. It's the stuff that is not being maintained that's migrating to it.
Right, so there's that constant flow that's
There's
gonna
some
happen.
stopgaps that we could look at, and it wouldn't just be they do it and we're done. We'd have to spend some staff time doing a lot more inspection and enforcement, but
I don't
that's
see
where
incentivizing someone who is renting a home out or apartment or mobile home.
Right.
Now, someone who's owner occupied, of course, let's help them out. But someone who's renting to make money and continues to do that, I don't want to help incentivize them.
We just passed the program, the
that's-
home initiative.
Yeah, I mean, that's
for people, but one of the requirements is you're not a slumlord. You're a, you're a homeowner and you've lived there. And I mean, so I think we've demonstrated. I agree with you on that. But
I
yeah,
will bring
for
back
renters-
that. I'll take responsibility for that part to come back with a discussion on that. That's okay.
for the rental population.
For the broader.
We don't want to wait until April to look at that. I mean, that's something we need to start looking at now.
Councilman Sutherland, then I'm going to let you finish your presentation. I know, but but this has been very valuable. Councilman Sutherland,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
agree with that. I just think we need to have the mobile homes in there too, and whatever kind of living conditions those people ought to have, that's what we ought to tell them they got to get as a landlord. And then put the pressure on them to do it, and let them spend their money, because we're spending, what, $100,000 a year or more to tear them down anyway. So if we can get some of them off of the tear down list, we'll save money, maybe. Anyway, thank you.
And I'll just wrap up by saying if we look at the numbers, overall in the city of Bryan, we have thousands of people who are landlords who are doing a good job. I mean, that's what you're saying. So I certainly wouldn't want the extent of this conversation to imply that your average landlord's not doing a good job. It looks like they are, but in these areas where we have dilapidated, unsafe, and certainly renting on the mobile homes where it is roughly 50%, that's a much worse number. But whatever the number is, let's try to get it fixed.
Homes, how many of those are rentals? Did we figure out that number?
We didn't wait. I'm guesstimating that if it's 50, around high 40s, that it's probably rentals is probably 30 to 40%. But it's a guess just based on triangulating from the mobile home number and the overall total number.
Yes, sir.
Got it. So, all right. Continue. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really exactly what we needed. It shows you have a high level of commitment to people living in healthy and safe homes, and that's what we want too. As Joey said, it is, we're giving you the big picture, but obviously the federal funds don't do all the work. So internally, we have several departments that we're working with and that work with us, and externally, we're working with a lot of different partners for that common goal. So we're going to move on quickly to non-housing. I think I mentioned this earlier. We're also charged with doing a needs assessment for health and social services and economic development. We don't fund economic development currently. We have in the past, but we do fund public services and could fund public facilities or infrastructures. Those programs are on the books. We're looking at the whole city and we're looking at who's doing what. Is that need being met without putting those federal funds into that particular area? So that's really what we're trying to weed out. Where is the highest priority and the most efficient use of the funds? Again, you saw with the numbers that we provided on the housing side that we're definitely making a difference. There's been a lot of repairs, reconstruction. There's been discussion about affordability and availability. We've been partnering with our churches. We just held our first focus group with our churches to encourage more partnership. We're going to do one with business leaders and with student groups to also encourage more partnership. And I feel very excited about that. But you'll see from just the numbers, even though the methodology was a little bit different, that we are trending down. And so we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, and with a little bit of push and with leadership from you, I think we can get there. On the non-housing side, we fund agencies that have increased financial literacy, increased job training, increased individuals who are working, increased case management for those individuals that can help them get better jobs and reduce some of their health and social service issues in order to have a healthier and safe living environment. Here's a slide that's fairly new that I'm very excited about. We had data from American Survey, which is census data, that shows a comparison between 2011 and 2017 in the number of households. Now, I have more detailed information, but basically this is showing you in the very, very lowest income categories, people are moving out of those categories. It's about a 3% increase where people are moving out of the very, very lowest. And then between 25,000 and almost 50,000, we have an increase in income. So I really think, to me, this is very exciting, and it really shows that with all of our different partners, with the economic development that the city's doing, with the agencies that you have approved through our annual action plans, that we really are moving the needle. And to me, this is hard evidence of, yes, we're doing what we need to be doing to get people working. We're doing what we need to get people to do to increase the number of hours they're working, not just part-time. This is Bryan only. I do have data comparing the same numbers to the state and to the United States, and I would say you guys are doing a great job. I mean, everything combined with what's going on within the city, our economy is going up, and the data reflects it.
I have a question, Elsie, on the previous slide as far as partnerships. How closely or do we work with Habitat for Humanity? I mean, because I know I've seen in my district, District 1, you know, they do a great job with, you know, putting new homes in some of these infill development lots. Do you work with Habitat? What's the partnership there?
Yes.
Is there anything?
Yes, we do. We're right now funding a sewer project for, I think it's 3 homes, for about $40,000 with home funding. We do provide down payment assistance to all of their clients. And we do meet on a regular basis. We just started this. Habitat belongs to the coalition, and they were instrumental with the City of College Station and the Brazos Valley Council of Governments, Habitat, and Rebuilding together to do these focus groups. We meet on a every other month basis with Habitat specifically to look at what they're doing and to talk about how we can partner. Currently, there is a regulation that's going to go into place in August of 2020 stating that on the CDBG, on the home side, any loans that we give have to go through, the clients receiving the loans have to go through a certified HUD-approved agency, and Habitat is in the process of doing that for us. And so there's been a lot of give and take there, and we're looking for more ways to work with them and talking and communicating on a more regular basis.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a slide that just shows you in the past 5 years, and I know it's a little hard to read, but I will tell you that District 1 and District 2 is where the majority of the federal funds are spent. Our programs are citywide, you know, so it is, we do not limit our programs, but just the majority of our clients happen to live in District 1 or District 2. So looking forward, if things stay the way they are currently and we don't trend down again on grants, you're looking at about $4 million, $4.5 million, and those are the requirements on the CDBG side. Basically think low and moderate income clients and low and moderate income areas. I will tell you, and also when I get to the LaSalle slide, there is another funding process that you may be interested in. It is a Section 108 loan. The city themselves have done 3 through our grants. The only drawback to that is you have to pledge future CDBG funds. But if you did a Section 108 loan, that is based on your ability to structure that loan where the developer would repay the funds. There's there's always a chance that that might not happen, but it's an opportunity to talk about that in the future. On the home side, all home funds, about almost $2 million. We get a substantial amount of program income every year, probably around $80,000 off our loans currently, so add that in. And again, to remind you, those are the income qualifications for our targeted population. Just a few pictures. I always like to show pictures, and I know that, you know, we've gone probably way over time, but those are some of the housing. Those are our Section 108, the LaSalle Hotel, and the Bryan-College Station Health Center. Some of our partners, as I mentioned earlier, Rebuilding Together. Of course, I've mentioned several times to you all that Stylecraft certainly has put a lot of effort into doing some rehabs for us, and are currently we're in the planning process for this year right now. Again, we have student groups who paint our houses, who do ramps for us. We're making the connections, they're doing the work. And there's that mobile home that I had mentioned earlier. This was a client of ours, and Rebuilding Together a lot with his partners. Wow. Just anteed up, and they completely tore that home down and rebuilt it. So in summary, I would like to ask if I could get an ad hoc committee that would engage District 1 and District 2 in our planning process. I think everybody is extremely important, but that would be my preference because most of our households live in District 1 and District 2 to kind of guide us through that process and be involved in the process with the focus groups and setting up some preliminary planning that we could come back with you in April. From what I'm hearing today, I know that you are very interested in more than what we're doing in looking at everything planning-wise, and also engaging our partners, our community partners, City of College Station and the county. But I would very much like it if you all could appoint, if they would be willing to do that, to be part of our planning process.
Are you looking for us to come up with people in the community, or are you asking for us personally?
Personally. What I really want to do is hold some focus group meetings in District 1 and District 2 with their leadership and have them participate in that.
I'm happy to join y'all.
Okay.
I think you've got it.
Okay.
If you want more council members to do that, we'll make it a council meeting.
Okay. Do you have any other questions? And I really appreciate your time, and I apologize for going over so much.
We're the ones that took the time. You were fast, but we're very interested in it, and glad we took the time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we've got any council committee reports. Councilman Hairston?
Yes. Recently had Experience Bryan-College Station, our yearly grant awarding session marathon. It's an 8-hour day. We award about $600,000 in grants to bring various conventions and events to Bryan-College Station area. We're also working currently to identify a hotel representative that is jointly recommended by both cities, and of course will be approved by both councils, and do not have that yet, but we hope to have that by the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Sutherland?
I don't have anything, Mayor.
Councilman Madison? Councilman Marine? Okay, we're going to adjourn and go upstairs.